my mother said. "No, kids, we want a quiet dinner." Then I arrived and saw my sister's 3 children running around wild. When my mother said her daughter's kids knew how to behave, I left and never came back. I am 33 years old and have a son named Charlie. Overall, I get along with my parents, but if you follow my posts, you know there is a lot of tension between me and my sister. Emily, she has always been the golden child, perfect in my parents' eyes, and if you ask them, they will insist that she is the better child, so I learned to accept it, or at least I thought I did. When Thanksgiving came this year, my parents called and invited me over, but they made one thing clear. "No kids this year, Sam. This time we are keeping it quiet. This will be an adult dinner." At first, I was a little sad, but then I thought, okay, maybe this will be good, a peaceful dinner without the chaos of kids running around. I was looking forward to a little adult time, and I thought I would leave Charlie at home with a babysitter for a few hours. The trip would be short. I would go hang out for a bit and then come home before he got lonely. I called my mother the night before to double-check the plans just to confirm. "Are you sure it is adults only, Mom?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Oh yes, Sam. We want a really quiet Thanksgiving without kids running around. Nothing noisy," she reassured me. Hearing that, I thought everything was settled. I left the house the next day, ready to spend a few hours with my family and then return to my son. It would be a quick and easy trip, at least, that is what I thought. When I arrived at my parents' house, everything looked just as I remembered. Everything was prepared for dinner. The house smelled strongly of food and had the warmth of the holiday season. I thought I would have a few peaceful hours with them, maybe even some quality time with my mother. But as I stepped inside, something immediately shocked me. The first thing I noticed was the noise. I didn't expect to hear children's laughter and rapid footsteps on the floor. I stood frozen for a moment, blinking in disbelief. I heard a voice call out, "Uncle Sam, Uncle Sam," and looked over to see Emily's kids. The 3 children were running in and out of the kitchen, chasing each other, playing tag, and making noise. The exact chaos my parents claimed they didn't want. I was stunned. Wait, what was this? I thought I was hallucinating, but no, those were Emily's children, confused and slightly annoyed. I turned to look at my mother, who was standing by the stove stirring sauce as if nothing had happened. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "you said no kids this year." She turned to me with a smile that didn't fit the situation. "Oh, honey, we said no kids, but Emily's children are here, and they're different." "It different," I said, my voice rising slightly. "What do you mean? You said dinner would be quiet, with no kids running around because they're too noisy, but this is exactly what you said you didn't want." My mother looked up at me with the expression she always used when she wanted to avoid an awkward conversation. "Well, your sister's children are very well behaved, Sam. They are quieter." I felt my face burn with anger. They are quieter. This was a direct slap in the face. I looked over at Emily, who was standing near the table with a smug smile, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "It is no big deal, Sam," Emily said. "Mom just wanted a quiet dinner with the family. And you know, my kids know how to behave. Know how to behave. My son is very well behaved. He isn't perfect, but he certainly isn't a problem yet somehow." I was the one excluded. My child was deemed too noisy for the Thanksgiving table while Emily's kids could run wild and make all the noise they wanted. I felt tears welling up. I was angry, but I didn't want to break down right there in front of everyone. I took a deep breath, my hands shaking. "I am sorry," I said, my voice trembling with frustration. "But I can't do this." I turned around and walked straight out the door without looking back. I didn't even wait for my mother to call after me or for Emily to say another word. I just left. I drove home in silence, my mind racing and my heart heavy with anger and hurt. I was treated as if I weren't part of the family, as if my son didn't matter, as if we were inferior. I wanted to tell my parents directly how I felt, to yell at them. But what good would it do? I already knew my place in their hearts. I wouldn't be able to convince them or change anything. 2 days passed. I thought maybe the holiday would blow over and I could move on with my life. But then this morning, the text messages started. First, it was my father asking how I was doing. He said he and Mom missed me and were sorry for how things went. but the words felt hollow. I could tell they were trying to smooth things over, but it felt fake. Then a text from Emily arrived. She asked if I could help them pay some bills. Apparently, they were tight on money this month, and she was asking for a loan, saying it was just temporary. I stared at the screen in disbelief. After treating me like I was worthless, after excluding me from a family dinner for a ridiculous reason, they had the audacity to ask me for money. I shook with anger, but I knew exactly what I had to do. I was not going to let them manipulate me, never again. I sat there staring at the text for a long time, letting the anger build up inside me. How could they do this? After everything that happened, after the blatant hypocrisy at Thanksgiving dinner, they still dared to come to me asking for money. I felt like I was drowning in frustration. They made me feel small, looked down on me and my son, and now they wanted me to come rescue them when things weren't going their way. How convenient. I didn't want to be the fixer anymore, the one who always cleaned up everyone else's mess while being treated like an afterthought. So, I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the phone. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to let this slide easily. I started typing. Emily, I saw your text. I know things are tough, but this time, I can't help you guys anymore. You made it clear that my son wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving, and I no longer want to be treated like an outsider. I've helped you enough, and you've taken advantage of my kindness for too long. I am done. I stared at the message for a moment before pressing send. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I knew this was the only sensible response. There was no way I could continue tolerating their behavior. I was not their bank, not their emotional crutch, and no longer their doormat. The reply came almost immediately. Sam, please don't be like this. We're family. I didn't mean it like that. I am just asking for a little help. We've always helped you, haven't we? We've always been there for you whenever you needed us. I felt my blood boil again. They had always been there for me. I couldn't remember a single time my parents or Emily had actually stood up for me. Sure, occasionally they made an effort, but it was always on their terms. Only when they wanted to look good. I could see right through the manipulation. Emily was trying to guilt, trip me, trying to make me feel bad for standing up for myself, but I wasn't falling for it anymore, not this time. I took a deep breath and texted back. Emily, you were never there for me when I needed you. You have no right to use me whenever it is convenient for you. If you need to figure things out, you have to do it on your own. I will no longer participate in this toxic cycle. Sending that gave me a strange mix of relief and frustration. I knew that what I had just said would likely cause a storm. It wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't keep letting them walk all over me. Then, as expected, my phone started ringing off the hook. First, it was my father again, telling me to think about the family and remember the old days. Then came a call from my mother. At first, I didn't answer. My hands were shaking too much, but she wouldn't stop calling. The phone rang again and again. Finally, I answered. Sam, why are you acting like this? Your father and I are very sad. We've always been there for you, my mother said, her voice softer than I expected. Really? You've always been there for me, I replied, feeling the anger in my voice rise again. You told me my son wasn't welcome at Thanksgiving, and you still haven't apologized for it. You treat me like I am not part of the family, but then you want me to step in when things get tough. That is not how it works. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I heard my mother sigh, a sound I knew all too well. It was the sound of dismissal. Sam, it is not like that. You are always being a bit dramatic, she started. I didn't accept it. No, I interrupted. You don't get to call me dramatic after what you did. You said my son was too loud. That is the issue here. I've been your child for so many years, and this is how you treat me. You can't pretend nothing happened and expect me to just get over it. I could hear her voice tremble as she tried to de-escalate the situation. Please. We're sorry. We just didn't want it to be too noisy. I laughed bitterly. You didn't want it to be too noisy, but Emily's kids can run around and scream, and that is just fine. You lied straight to my face. I felt tears threatening to fall again, but I forced them back. I was not going to let them manipulate me into feeling guilty. Mom, I am done. I've had enough. I am not your safety net, nor am I plan B for when things don't work out. Don't call me back unless you are ready to apologize. Truly apologize. The line was silent for a few seconds, before my mother sighed again, as if trying to dismiss the matter. "We'll talk later, okay?" "Yeah, we'll see," I muttered, hanging up the phone. The rest of the day passed like a blur. I went to bed feeling angry, betrayed, and exhausted. My phone remained silent after the call with my mother, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they tried again. They always did. It wasn't just the Thanksgiving incident that hurt me, it was everything that led up to it. The way they always made me feel inferior to Emily, the way they idolized her while I had to swallow my tears and go along with it. I was sick of it. Then another text arrived, once again from Emily. "Sam, we really need help. Things are getting really bad, and we have no one else to turn to. Please, just this once. I swear I'll make it up to you." I sat there for what felt like forever, staring at the message on my phone. I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me, making the air in the room feel heavy. Every part of me wanted to say no, to cut ties completely and walk away. But a small voice whispered in my head that they were family, that maybe they would change, that they needed me. No, I quickly reminded myself, they hadn't changed. Not really. They apologized for their actions, but only to save face and maintain appearances, not because they truly acknowledged what they had done. I had allowed them to take advantage of me for so long out of fear of pushing them away completely. But this time felt different. I set my phone down on the table, leaned back in my chair, and rubbed my temples. I was exhausted by the emotional games and the guilt trips expecting me to always yield. My son was my top priority, and he deserved a father who knew how to stand up for himself. Someone who showed him that he didn't need to bow down to people who didn't respect him. I closed my eyes for a moment, reflecting on how my parents had treated me over the years. They gave Emily everything, praising her for every little thing while I was left to handle the leftovers. I wasn't just the black sheep of the family, I was the one forced to fight for crumbs. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't want to look, but curiosity won, and I picked it up. It was another text from Emily. "Sam, please. I am really sorry for how things played out. You know I didn't mean to hurt you, right? Things have been so hard lately. The kids, the house, everything. I am trying, but I don't know what to do. I need you. We need you, please." Those words felt like a punch to the gut. She was trying to guilt-trip me again, making it seem like I was the one abandoning her when she was the one who had turned her back on me for years. "We need you." How many times had I heard that phrase, only to be left out in the cold when I needed someone to stand up for me? This time, I wasn't falling into the trap. I had to remain firm and stand my ground for myself and my son. I took a deep breath and typed my response. "I am sorry, Emily, but I won't enable this anymore. You made it clear that I wasn't welcome when things didn't go your way. I've helped you in the past, but I am done now. I have to look out for myself, and that doesn't include being the person you run to every time you need something. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them." I hit send without looking back. It felt both liberating and terrifying. I knew this was the breaking point, the moment that could change everything. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Sam, what is going on? Why are you distancing yourself from us? We're family, and we've always helped you, even when you didn't ask for it. Don't do this." I stared at the message, letting the words sink in. "We've always helped you." I had heard it so many times that it barely registered anymore. They always acted as if I owed them something, as if they had done so much for me, when in reality, it was always the absolute bare minimum. I took a deep breath and called my mother. I didn't want to keep texting back and forth anymore. I needed to hear her voice one last time, to hear how she would try to manipulate me into giving in. When she answered, her voice sounded calm, but I could tell she was starting to feel frustrated. "Sam, please," she said. "I don't understand why you are doing this. We've always been there for you. We're your family. Always been there for me." I repeated, my voice rising. "You haven't been there for me. You've only been there for Emily. You always put her first, and you make me feel like I am just a backup. Well, I've had enough. I am sick of being the second choice. I am sick of being your safety net. I am done." I could hear her let out a sharp sigh. "Take a deep breath, Sam. Don't say that. You don't mean it. We can work this out. We're family. You are overreacting. Don't make a big deal out of this." My heart pounded, and anger surged within me, overreacting. Really? After everything they had done to me? That was what she chose to say. I am not overreacting, I fired back. I've been patient for too long. I've let you guys take advantage of me, and I won't stand for it anymore. My whole life I've felt like I meant nothing to you, as if I were just extra baggage. I won't sit here and pretend everything is fine when you treat me like this. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her shallow, trembling breaths. She didn't know how to respond, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. You don't understand, Sam, she finally said, her voice shaking. We were just trying to help. It hasn't been easy for any of us. No, it hasn't been easy for you, I replied firmly. You never wanted to help, you just wanted to control. After that, she said nothing more. I hung up, knowing that everything had just changed forever. A strange mix of relief and fear crept through me. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't sure if it was from the anger still smoldering inside or the weight of what I had just done. Cutting ties with my family felt partly like a betrayal, but at the same time it felt like the most honest thing I had ever done. Time passed. I stared at my phone for a little longer, feeling the quietness in the house, the absence of all those familiar yet suffocating family dynamics. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful, like the calm after a storm when the wind has settled, and all that remains is the wreckage. But I knew it was necessary. I had spent too much time pleasing people who didn't truly care about me. And now, I was finally standing up for myself and putting my son first. I wasn't going to let my family continue to drag me down with their expectations, guilt trips, and favoritism. For years, I had let them make me feel like I wasn't good enough, as if I had to earn my place in the family and prove myself every single day. And in the end, it was never enough. I couldn't let my son grow up witnessing that kind of toxic behavior. He deserved better. He deserved a strong, confident father who knew his worth, knew how to set boundaries, and knew how to protect him, someone who wasn't afraid to walk away from relationships that no longer served him. The phone buzzed again, another text message. This time from Emily. Sam, please don't do this. I am sorry. I know I was wrong, but you are making things worse. You are breaking up the family. I need you. We all need you. You can't just walk away. We're your family. Those words sounded so empty. You are breaking up the family. That was always the threat, wasn't it? The ultimate guilt trip, the one thing they could use to make me feel like the bad guy. But this time, it didn't work. I didn't feel a shred of guilt. I didn't feel bad for making a tough choice. I felt stronger. I didn't even bother to reply. Instead, I locked my phone and turned it off. I didn't need to hear any more. I needed space to think. I needed to focus on myself and my son. And for the first time in a long time, I was no longer constantly worrying about their drama. I wasn't pacing back and forth wondering if they were going to reach out again, demanding an explanation or playing their familiar psychological games. That evening, I curled up on the sofa with my son while he played contentedly beside me. I had been so wrapped up in family troubles for so long that I had almost forgotten the simple peace of it just being the two of us. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest for years seemed to lift a little, and I felt like I could breathe again. I no longer had to worry about all the stress and resentment that had built up over the years. I no longer felt obligated to choose between my son and my family. The next few days were quieter than I expected. My phone was silent, and I wasn't sure whether I should feel relieved or anxious. Was this the calm before the storm? I didn't know, but something told me this was only the beginning. I was under no illusion that my family would let me go easily. They would argue, they would pull at my heartstrings, try to make me feel guilty and try to manipulate me into coming back, but I was ready for it. A week later, the inevitable happened. My mother showed up at my front door. She didn't knock, and she didn't call beforehand. She just appeared right outside. Her face was pained but determined. I could see she had been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed. But I wasn't going to fall into the trap this time. Not this time. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe, staring at her without saying a word. Sam, she began, her voice soft and trembling. You can't just do this. We're your family. You can't cut off contact with me like this. I've called so many times, but you wouldn't answer. I just need you to understand my side. I do understand, Mom. I replied, keeping my voice calm. I understand that you've always put me second behind Emily. I understand that no matter what I do, it will never be enough. And I understand that if I keep letting myself be treated this way, nothing will ever change. Her face contorted in shock, as if she didn't know what to say. She took a step back as though my words had struck her. You don't mean that, she said, almost begging. You can't. You are just upset, and I understand that, but you don't realize what you are doing. This isn't just about you and Emily. This is about the whole family. No, it is about me, I snapped. This time, it is about me. And I am putting an end to all of it. I've spent my whole life trying to be good enough for you and for Emily. I tried to be everything you wanted, but it was never enough. I've had enough of these games. I am tired of the drama, and this time I am not coming back. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a split second, I almost felt guilty. But I shook my head, fighting off the feeling. I couldn't let myself slide back into that old cycle of manipulation and guilt. I love you, Mom, I said, my voice softening slightly, but I need to love myself more. I need to stand up for what is right for me, and right now that means walking away. She stood there for a long moment, staring at me with a mixture of disbelief and sadness on her face. But I didn't flinch, I didn't apologize, and I didn't back down. Finally, she turned and walked away without another word or another reproach. As she disappeared at the end of the driveway, I closed the door behind her and locked it without looking back. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be filled with challenges. But I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life. I simply stopped begging for a seat at their table and built a better one for myself. 6 months after that Thanksgiving, I realized something I never thought I would say. I didn't miss the chaos. Sure, sometimes I missed the idea of my family, what I had always wanted them to be. The kind of parents who would call just to ask how Charlie was doing, the kind of sister who would invite us over because she genuinely wanted us there, not because she needed something. I missed the idea of a family where no one had to compete for affection or prove they were worthy of a seat at the table. But I didn't miss what we actually had. Once I understood the difference, everything became easier. The first month after my mother showed up at my doorstep was probably the hardest. My parents called repeatedly, and Emily sent messages ranging from apologies to anger, even accusing me of punishing her children out of jealousy. I didn't reply. Eventually, I blocked her phone number. I didn't do it out of hatred. I did it because every notification made my stomach twist, and I was tired of letting her control my daily life like that. My parents were harder. I didn't block them immediately, but I stopped responding unless their messages were polite. At first, that meant I hardly responded at all. My father sent long texts about how family should forgive one another. My mother kept saying she didn't understand why one Thanksgiving dinner made me throw away 33 years of family. That was when I finally realized they still didn't get it. It was never just about one Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving was simply the moment when everything became impossible to ignore. Surprisingly, Charlie was the one who helped me understand it better than anyone else. One evening, while we were eating pizza on the sofa, he casually asked, "Dad, why don't we go to Grandma's house anymore?" I froze. Having spent weeks wondering what I would say to him, I didn't want to plant seeds of fear about them in his mind, and I certainly didn't want to drag a child into adult drama. So, I told him the simplest truth possible. Sometimes the people we love don't treat us well, and sometimes we need a little space until they learn to behave better. Charlie thought about that while chewing his pizza, then shrugged. "Okay, can we watch a movie?" And that was it. No dramatic breakdown, no interrogation. Kids have a strange way of making complex things simple. I had spent my whole life convincing myself that sharing blood meant I had to endure whatever they did. My son understood in 10 seconds that loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. Life gradually grew quieter. I started spending more time with Charlie, not because I hadn't before, but because I was finally truly present instead of constantly distracted by whatever family crisis was happening that week. We started having Friday movie nights. We made pancakes on Sunday mornings. Sometimes they turned out great. Sometimes I burnt them so badly that Charlie suggested we keep a fire extinguisher next to the stove. I laughed more. I slept better. I stopped checking my phone every 20 minutes. Then, about 3 months after everything happened, I received a letter from my father, an actual handwritten letter. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity won out. This time, there were no excuses. He wrote that he had spent months thinking about what I had said. He admitted that he and my mother had treated Emily differently over the years. He confessed they had convinced themselves it was justified because Emily needed more help. While I was seen as independent enough to handle things on my own, he said that along the way they had mistaken my ability to survive without their support for not needing their support at all. That sentence stayed with me. It didn't erase anything, but it was the first time either of them acknowledged what had actually happened, without immediately explaining why I shouldn't be upset about it. My father didn't ask me to call, he simply apologized, and said that if I ever wanted to talk to him again, he would always be ready. I waited 2 weeks before calling him back. The conversation lasted 15 minutes. It wasn't a miraculous reconciliation. There were awkward silences, and neither of us really knew what to say. But when he apologized again, I believed him. My mother took longer. She still wanted everything fixed immediately. She wanted family dinners, holidays, and pictures where everyone smiled as if nothing had ever happened. I told her that wasn't going to happen. If she wanted a relationship with me and Charlie, she had to build it slowly, and there would be firm boundaries. To my surprise, she eventually agreed. Emily did not. The last message I received from her was passed through my father since I still had her blocked. Apparently, she wanted me to know that she thought I was selfish and had abandoned the family when they needed me most. I asked my father one question. Has she ever apologized for excluding Charlie? He stayed silent, which told me everything. I told him I hoped Emily and her kids were doing well, but I wasn't ready to let her back into my life. Maybe one day that would change, or maybe it wouldn't. I finally understood that forgiveness doesn't require contact. The biggest test came when Thanksgiving rolled around again. A year ago, the thought of having to spend Thanksgiving without my parents would have devastated me. This time, Charlie and I made our own plans. We invited a few friends who had nowhere else to go, ordered way too much takeout, and transformed our small dining room into the most chaotic Thanksgiving table I had ever seen. Kids were running around wild. Someone spilled juice, and the turkey took almost an hour longer to cook than expected. Charlie laughed so loudly that I could hear him all the way from the kitchen, and every time I heard that laugh, I remembered the words my mother had spoken the year before. Too noisy. I looked around at the chaos, the noise, and the people squeezed around the table, and I couldn't stop smiling. This was exactly the kind of Thanksgiving my parents had wanted to avoid, and it was wonderful. In the middle of dinner, Charlie climbed onto the chair next to me and whispered, "Dad, this is the best Thanksgiving ever." I had to look away for a moment because my eyes started to sting. "Yeah," I said, wrapping my arm around him, "I think so too." Late that night, after everyone had gone home and Charlie was asleep, I stood in the kitchen surrounded by dirty dishes and leftovers. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. "Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you and Charlie had a great day. Love you both." There was no guilt, tripping, no demands, no expectation for me to come over. Just a simple text, I replied. "Happy Thanksgiving, Dad. We had a great day. Hope you did too." Then I put my phone down. That was when I realized how much everything had changed. A year ago, I had walked out of my parents' house feeling rejected, angry and convinced that standing up for myself meant losing my family. Instead, I learned that boundaries don't destroy healthy relationships. They expose unhealthy ones and create space for healthy ones to grow. My relationship with my parents wasn't magically fixed, and maybe it never would be entirely. Emily and I still weren't speaking. There were still moments when I wondered if I was being too harsh, and there were nights when the memories of growing up as the second choice hurt more than I wanted to admit. But those moments no longer controlled me. Most importantly, Charlie would never grow up believing he had to beg relatives to treat him like he had value. He would never have to ask why his cousins were welcomed somewhere, while he wasn't. As long as I had a say, my son would know that being loved wasn't something he had to earn. Before going upstairs that Thanksgiving night, I walked into the living room and looked at the little colored paper turkey Charlie had made at school. On each feather, he had written something he was grateful for: pizza, video games, our house, his friends, and on the biggest feather, in scribbly handwriting, he had written, "My dad." I stood there smiling like an idiot. For years, I had worried about whether I was good enough for my parents. I had constantly compared myself to Emily, to their expectations, and to every impossible standard they set before me. Along the way, I had forgotten the only question that truly mattered. Was I becoming the father my son deserved to have? Looking at that silly paper turkey, I finally knew the answer. I turned off the light and went upstairs. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't the suffocating silence that followed the initial fights with my family. This silence felt safe. It felt earned. I didn't know exactly what the future held for my parents, Emily, or me. Maybe there would be reconciliation one day, or maybe not. I finally accepted not knowing because leaving hadn't broken my family. It had taught me what a family was supposed to feel like. And as I checked on Charlie one last time before going to bed, pulling the blanket over his shoulders and watching him sleep peacefully, I realized I hadn't lost my place in any family. I had simply stopped begging for a seat at their table and built a better one for myself.